Okay. So welcome to our webinar, everyone. So let me present myself. My name is David Muniz, and I work for Singasigura since 2017 in the marketing team. Together with me, we have Felipe Pires and Arnold Koch. Felipe works as a security engineer, security researcher, security advocate, and security instructor. And in addition to be a speaker and creator of the malware attack types with a Q chain methodology published in Pentest magazine and malware analysis fundamental HackerSec courses. Together with us is Arnold Koch. Arnold is currently the product manager at DCC Netherlands, BV. Arnold has been working in the ICT environment since the 1990s. And during this time, he has been active in many roles with several companies. Arnold also has broad experience in security-related solutions like antivirus and, of course, privileged access management. Well, the dynamic of this webinar will be a roundtable. I will start discussing and approaching several topics, of which I will ask them some questions. Of course, they will be driven to either Arnold or Felipe, but of course, the other is welcome to add also insights to the questions. Okay. And then after the questions, I will close with the conclusions, and we will give way to questions section and final comments as well. Okay, so without any further ado, let's start saying that, well, the first thing that we need to cover in this webinar is the whole digital transformation process. Probably everyone here has already heard about digital transformation that is occurring right now in the world. But let's first start, approach what digital transformation is. Well, digital transformation can be considered as the integration of digital technology in all areas of a company, regardless of its vertical. So it's not just talking about startup companies and tech companies. All the companies in this connected world are now somewhat connected with digital transformation. Well, and digital transformation is fundamentally changing the way it operates and providing value to the customers of a company. And examples of the technology used as part of this reinvention process can be mentioned like big data, cloud computing, Internet of Things, in industrial Internet of Things, and of course mobility. And the digital world has evolved, and it is very different from what it was like 10 years ago. And although we know that the Internet and electronic devices and other technologies began to be used more than 2 decades ago, the evolution that has been taking place in the last 10 years has made the difference in this context. So for the first question, and I'd like to ask Arnold to ask the question, it is what do you think, Arnold, are the main changes that we can identify and that you consider the most relevant in this digital transformation context?
Yeah, thank you, David. Well, as we know, the COVID-19 pandemic forced companies to expand upon their digitalization. Not all of them were quite ready yet to enable the co-workers and external staff to work from home and having to open up their office environment through VPNs and other solutions. Some people were going to the office normally, and all of a sudden people were not allowed to go to the office anymore and had to go work from home and see how they can access their work environment. And the speed in which these changes were required could easily have compromised the security baselines. Most companies were familiar with Zoom, WebEx, GoToMeeting, and Microsoft Teams, but they were using it for webinars, not per se for collaboration tools. And there have been a lot of changes during the last 1.5 years, because now everybody knows about Team for working together.
Okay. We've also seen some shifts in this environment. So I think not only not only the landscape, but the perimeter, the security perimeter no longer exists, right? And now that the infrastructure can be seen as transparent to the user. Well, this digital world has evolved, and it's very different from what it was. But pretty much all this digital transformation process helps an organization to keep pace with emerging customer demands and makes the company able to respond now and sustaining them in the future, while enabling and to compete in an economic environment that is constantly changing as technology evolves. And we can see that companies are competition among companies are increasingly in this context. So Arnold, again with you, can we say that this whole digital transformation process has become more than a trend? We can call that a digital transformation is a business imperative for those companies.
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, again, people are forced to do the digital transformation, and being forced, as I mentioned before, also gives you a possible impeachment of your security. If you ask 100 IT admins for a list of all the accounts that they have in their system with elevated privileges, like AD logins, routers, switches, printers, switches, servers, database, etc., most of them only can give you an educated guess. There is no list out of the box that they can get. And that also means that it's very hard for an operator or an IT guy from a company to make sure that everything works the way it should work. And we're talking about security, but we also talk about functionality. If people work with laptops from home, do they have the application there? Are firewalls open? Is VPN working, etc.? So it's a big issue. But as I mentioned, it has to be a trend because there's no other way to work at the moment. And we see that where normally the priority was low for working from home and working with digital transformation, these processes have been speeded up by the pandemic.
Excellent. Well, in this time of pandemics, the adoption of cloud and mobility are said to be to have acted as the main drivers of digital transformation. Well, but at a certain point, COVID-19 has become the measuring instrument to know how prepared we were on this path of digital transformation. And the different organizations have had to respond practically overnight when the pandemic came, giving their employees facilities to carry out remote work, as Arnold has already mentioned, and accessing the company's IT assets from all kinds of devices. And this whole context has changed, and this change has forced IT security teams to make sure and to ensure and to protect access to critical assets. Well, and as I've mentioned before, the traditional perimeter protection and common architecture and processes quickly reached their limits and required security teams a different approach, which is basically what the zero trust security concept is all about. Now, I'll give the word to you, Felipe. Can you tell us more about zero trust and what it is, and how do you believe that zero trust architecture and approaches can help companies to protect those accesses that Arnold have said, and to increase also their level of cybersecurity?
Yes, of course. Hi, Dave. Hi, Arnold. So first of all, thank you for this conversation. I think it's pretty awesome because we can, give our idea about this awesome topics, and it's a pleasure to be here. And zero trust, it's pretty nice topic. By the way, I really like because as David mentioned, when we talk about the perimeter, I think it's not old approach. It's continue to be a good approach because it's necessary to protect it. And there are many different companies. But when many startups are starting in the cloud, as David mentioned, so it's necessary to see with a new approach. Because of this, it's very important to understand more about the zero trust. The concept, not only concept, and by the way, I like to talk about that because I believe it's a culture when we need to implementing something related to a zero trust, because we need to have more than one culture. We need to, for example, have actually the perspective from the attacker. We need to monitoring and see all those connections that you have inside your infrastructure. This is the basically of the future of the zero trust. It means, no one is trust, right? So, or insider or outsider, because when you see to the old approach, when you talk about the cybersecurity or cyber criminals, the idea is to see about the outside a company. But nowadays we have many insider of the company. By the way, if you see on the internet, for example, many different groups of the APTs, advanced persistent threats, to try to talk with the people, to hire these people to be an insider of this in the many different companies. Because of this, it's necessary to implementing the zero trust culture. But of course, if we implementing that, we have another different things like we need to have the privileged access management. It's one of these different aspects that is involved, right? Because as Arnold and David mentioned, in the past, we have just admin IT responsible to give the privileged access. But nowadays, we have the database teams, we have the DevOps teams, we have the DevSecOps teams. So the many guys, or not only guys, but ladies, but many people inside of the company need to have the access and the different infrastructure. And by the way, these people needs to have the privileged access, to implementing something, implementing new feature, to create new product. Because of this is necessary implementing the privileged access management, identity access management. And when you have this kind of solutions, we need to implement in the future of the zero trust, because because of this is necessary, because we have many people, like I mentioned in the beginning of this conversation, like a startup working with a cloud native. And it's, when you have, for example, some VPN, virtual private network, from the attacker perspective, it's only one connection that you have, right? For example, if I am an employee, as Arnold mentioned, if I work from home, for example, from the attacker perspective, the attacker just need to exploit myself. And after that, they have the access in my infrastructure. But if I have some privileged access in my environment, or just only some applications, from the attacker perspective, the attacker just have the access and this specifically application, and not in my entire infrastructure. So that's the point here, right? So because of this, it's very important in implementing the culture of the zero trust, using some context. The context, it's basically we need to define some protocols and the locations and another different rules that you can apply the policies to establish, to install the zero trust concept using the privileged access management has a tools, right, to help you.
I think the most important representative of an insider should be Edward Snowden, right? I think he represents
it's a good example,
exactly
by the way.
what insider is. Yeah, because he had the legitimate access, and he used those legitimate access to perform a malicious action. And we're not discussing
actually it's a good point, Dave, because it's a good example of the insider, because they have the access on internal infrastructure in systems, but the action, it's not totally malicious in that case, right? Because they collected
unauthorized
access.
Should be unauthorized, could be
and for this perspective, okay, but it's not for example, nowadays it's almost different. because you have some employees inside the company, they can, open the door to the attacker to go inside of the company. It's almost different approach, but it makes sense when you tell about this knowledge.
I think unauthorized should be a better word. You were saying, Arno?
If you have something about the zero trust, if you consider the privileged credentials as the keys of the kingdom, as we often do in the market, if I leave my keys on the table, I could just leave the door open, because if a colleague grabs my keys and does things without my knowledge, it's something that everyone should consider. How do you protect those keys to the kingdom? And it could be an insider, it could be an outsider, it could be anyone for that matter.
Yeah, it's true. And since we're talking about privileged credentials, one of the aspects that involved in the cybersecurity of the companies is what Arnold have just said, the keys of the kingdom. That's how privileged accounts are called. And privileged accounts are those accounts that have special permission and capabilities over and above a standard account. And these kinds of accounts, they provide access to critical actions. Those actions can be, for example, modifying a domain controller settings or transferring funds from an organization's account, like on a ERP systems. So they also allow organizations to protect their infrastructure and applications, and also to manage their business efficiently and to keep sensitive data confidential and also critical infrastructure. Well, in times of greater compliance regulation, so we've seen HIPAA, for example, PCI SOX, and of course GDPR in Europe, and here in Brazil, GPD. And the organization, they need to assure the protection and the correct manage of those privileged accounts to reduce, of course, those cyber risks and avoid multi-million-dollar sanctions, and of course nowadays to ensure business continuity. Well, one of the biggest cybersecurity threats is the potential misuse of privileged accounts when hackers gain control of privileged accounts. Well, by a variety of means, of course. We mentioned Edward Snowden, but this is not the only way that malicious can use privileged credentials. Well, and as a piece of information that I'd like to bring here to this session is the potential misuse of those privileged accounts, the keys of the kingdom. According to IBM's data breach investigation report, 61% of the data breach surveyed involved the use of privileged accounts. And likewise, Forrester estimates that privileged accounts are involved in 80% of security breach. Well, and although in most of all incidents, there is some abuse of privileged access. And since we're talking about data breaches and cybersecurity incidents, Felipe, can you remember our audience some of these big cyber attacks that involved privileged credentials, so we can have an idea of the impact that those cyber attacks can have?
Yeah, we have many different, exploitation or exposure of the information, right? So of course, nowadays we have the main attack. It's a ransomware, and by the way, we will have another webinar that we will talk about the ransomware in practical stuff. But in another way, from the attacker perspective, is about the expose of the data. And I can mention about, for example, the LinkedIn data breach in 2021, by the way, in June, if I remember correctly. And we have this kind of exposed, and I think it's in Yahoo data breach in 2017, and Facebook, and the first American Financial Corp data breach, it's another in 2019. Facebook, as I mentioned, I think it's in Twitter, I think it's 2020 18, it's a big exposure of the informations, and if you see, it's many credentials there from the users and the employees, by the way, so all of people, right? And the impact you can see, it's about the damage of the company, right? And then the price in the value the company it's to impact that, right? And if you remember another, it's a court venture like experience. It's a firm of the financial in the US, and Adobe, it's another. My Fitness Pal, if you remember, and Equifax, I think it's the very known data breach in 2017. I remember that, and the big impact of in the US, by the way. So, and you have another like eBay, and I can stay during 1 hour talk about many different companies and the impact. I think it's for everyone. It's very known, the impact of the brand and the price in the not only the product but the brand impacted.
I think we can still see the unfold of the Equifax data breach. So probably our audience should be familiar with these cyber attacks, because, well, it's been unfolding since the attack. The Congress and the American government has been trying to chase down, at least finding them and giving away sanctions to Equifax. So this doesn't happen, because, well, it affected a lot of people, not only in the US, but also in the UK as well, in Europe. Since we're talking to an European agent audience, also they affected not only people in the US, but also in the United Kingdom as well.
Yeah, and of course, if data is breached and credentials are breached, there are still a lot of people that reuse credentials over and over again. So if LinkedIn is breached and credentials are stolen, then people can use that to go into other platforms, because, yeah, it's difficult to make different passwords, very complex passwords for every platform that you use as a customer. Same goes for companies. So people are really creative in pressing an additional exclamation mark on a password, and hackers will just reuse what they find on other platforms and hopefully get access to your data from there as well.
Yeah, it's true. And if you're not sure whether your email was victim of our cyber attack, I invite you to check our website. We have a service called Singasigura Hunter that you can check whether your emails have been, if you've been a victim of a data breach or not. And it's true, people have been reusing their passwords throughout different services. So if they are a victim of, for example, LinkedIn, malicious attackers can use this password on other services that the user has access. So I think one way to well, at least avoid those kind of attacks, it could be adding two-factor authentication, for example, and other security mechanisms to avoid those attackers to gain access to other privileged accounts. It's a good point that you've mentioned, Arno. And now that we are aware of the many cyber attacks that involves privileged credentials, well, let's take a look at the risks associated. Felipe has mentioned the financial aspect, but of course there are other aspects as well that should be considered. And to begin this next topic, I will mention a survey that has been conducted by IBM that have found that the cost of a data breach report has found that the cost of an attack that involves privileged credentials, it is $4.77 million, well above the overall average that was 3.86 million. However, as I've mentioned before, those risks that are involved in a cyber attack go beyond financial losses. And what other losses do you think companies can have from being victim of a cyber attack, and this goes for you, Arnold. What can we say that, well, of course, not only the financial risk is involved, what are the other risks that we can see for a company that suffers a data breach?
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, that's again, financial loss is something that people think about the first, especially having to pay the ransom. So that's really in focus on what potential costs are. But when a bad actor compromises an environment, more often than not, he will try to stay undetected for a long period. He's learning about the day-to-day operations of his victim. So whenever he decides to do so, and not when the customer knows about it, he could exfiltrate data, delete backups, corrupt files, or take a company hostile. And at that time, it will be very hard to not agree to his demands because you don't have any fallback scenario anymore. There's no backup in the cloud because they deleted things. They removed your volume shadow copy services. They encrypted your NAS device. So they did everything to make sure that you, as a company, don't have any alternative left than to just pay up. And yeah, the best thing, of course, is to not pay the ransom, because actually you are giving their money for their job that they did, and it keeps them alive because it's a very big business, the malware business. I think that if you look in total, that the malware business is bigger than the total security business in the world, and they have almost unlimited resources for that. But besides the financial loss, then we could see that the company also have a loss of intellectual property for data leakage, for instance, if plans are stolen, blueprints are stolen, etc. Reputation damage. So if I look at a company that has been hacked and they didn't do maximum to security, how can I trust them? Especially if it's an insurance company or something, how can I ever trust them again to keep my part right? But also the labor to fix the things. It's a lot of work to repair. And liability, of course, the fines for not keeping the rules, ransom that we have to pay, and in some cases, even bankruptcy. If there's no backup to restore to, if your good name is gone, your reputation is gone, then you can even go bankrupt. And I remember there was an investigation by Gartner, or a report from Gartner, I think about 8-9 years ago, where they stated that 1 of 5 companies that were taken hostage or get infected by viruses are out of business in a year's time. So that's amazing.
I was just going to mention another research that I also have had here, that is specifically for the Brazilian market. But of course, this also could apply for other markets as well. I had a data that shows that 60% of small and medium business go out of business within the 6 months after a cyber attack. So it is important just not only for big companies, but also for small and medium businesses to ensure cybersecurity. And of course, those companies, sometimes they don't have an actual cybersecurity area. So it is very important that they had specific solutions to address cybersecurity issues.
Yeah. There are even security companies that have insurances for cyber risks, but the costs are so high that it's sometimes very difficult, especially for an enterprise market, to get those insurances.
Yeah, and another data that I'd like to add here, you're talking about detecting malicious attackers. According to Verizon's data breach investigations report, the average time that a company takes to detect a cyber attack is 280 days, which is quite significant, taking into account that the malicious attackers can perform lateral movement and also infect other resources in the infrastructure. Well, now that we know all the the risks that are associated, and those are not only financial, the effort to mitigate those cybersecurity risks, I believe here that it involves 3 aspects: tools, technology, processes, policies, and procedures, and also people. And it's not only the tools. Even though we are a vendor of cybersecurity tool, it's not only implementing PAM that we help businesses to address those risks. And we believe here that the most difficult here are processes and people. And because of this, it can be said that the state of the art in cybersecurity technology is useless if business processes are not well defined and also people do not have an adequate cybersecurity awareness, including those in the C-level, because, well, probably the privileged credentials have more power than the operational workers as well. And because of that, they are the biggest target of attacking threats. Well, in this case, tackling the technology side without working the rest can result indeed in increased cybersecurity risks, and in addition to budget impacts that can affect business continuity. Well, the recommendation here would be establish the processes, increase cybersecurity culture and awareness among all personnel, and especially in the C-level, then think about purchasing and deploying solutions to properly manage those cybersecurity risks. And that's for you now, Felipe. Do you think that the cybersecurity leaders, the C-level, they are making the necessary efforts to protect organizations against those cyber attacks? And if not, what do you think that they can do to improve this state?
It's a good point. It's a good question. And by the way, it's a polemic question because we have different leaders, as you mentioned, in the infrastructure. Of course, we are talking about the C-level, right? And we have a different C-level in the companies. We have a CFO, we have a CEO, and we have a CIO. We have a CTO, a different approach, right? And the big challenge here is it depends, of course, of the business of the company. Because, for example, if the company was born in the technology, like startups, or like a software houses company, usually it's more next to the idea with the security. But unfortunately, nowadays we have the process to create a new product, to develop a new feature, and many times that I am seeing in different companies, the security is a second step, not a mainly steps. It's the main idea to see. And from my perspective, I think should be necessary more effort from the C board, right? And so how it's possible to improve that? And of course, the approach with these people, it's necessary to be changed. We necessary from the security guys, we need to talk with the C board level with more about the risk, about the impact of the risk. For example, about the impact with some data is exposed, if some intellectual property stuff, like Arnold mentioned during our conversation. And because, for example, from the CFO perspective, more interesting is it's about the money, about the solved, about the money, how much money the company are saving in the end of the day, right? And so from the security guy perspective, we need to change the approach. That's my idea about that, because the threats are changing all the time, and as we can see in the news, many different exploitations, different techniques, and many leaks about the credentials. And from my perspective, it's obviously, but I think we need to talk more about the risk to improve, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, you've mentioned that, and it's important to mention here that cybersecurity is not seen as an investment, because the area pretty much doesn't give any return. And we were talking about this last week, that usually leaders, they don't see the return that all the efforts employed in cybersecurity can give. Well, the thing is that cybersecurity only avoids you to have a cyber attack in your organization, but that you cannot see profit from that. And this is something that is changing right now. And I don't know if you agree with me, you and Arnold. Well, and now cybersecurity is not being seen that anymore. Do you also see this shift going on?
Yeah, I think that there's a good comparison to make. If somebody decides to build a brand new house or an office building, he can make it very nice looking. But if the foundation is not there, it will collapse eventually. And security is the foundation on which a company grows, except for the business process, of course. So it should be a good part of your budget to secure the security settings and processes.
Yeah, I completely agree, David, because I have an experience to work with a company here in Brazil and in Europe, by the way, in US, and I'm seeing different approaches. Many companies would like to be a high technology company, right? Like a Facebook, Instagram, like Amazon. But when you look more deeply about the security, it's a second plan, right? It's and from my perspective, it's not correct, because you are a software house. You produce some product, and if your product is totally vulnerable, the impact in the end of the day is terrible. And it as you mentioned, it's not a cost, it's an investment, not investment. Maybe it should be I change your investment to a necessary step, right? And when you talk about the security, yeah, it's totally necessary. And because when you talk about the technology or digital growing or anything like this, it's a new technology. Everyone knows about the threat. So how it's possible the leaders doesn't see this kind of approach? It's totally necessary, right? Because in the end of the day, you can create some startup, some company, and in a few hours you can have a big problem in your investment, in your leaders, in your it's terrible.
In a matter of hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Well, to help organizations to properly protect privileged credentials in their environments, we say here at Singasigura that we have to see and we have to consider the whole privileged access process in their cybersecurity strategy, and this includes not only the discovery of those assets, credentials, and digital certificates, and of course access provisioning, to the visibility and of actions performed in the environment. And this whole strategy should also pass through the actual privilege management. And like this, it is possible to cover the entire privileged access lifecycle. And the first step of this lifecycle includes the mapping and identification of all assets that are connected to the environment, and also their privileged credentials. And I'd like to explore this first step further with you. One of the means to reduce the attack surface is to use what we call the just-in-time access. Felipe, can you tell us more about just-in-time and how it can help organizations to reduce the attack surface in the infrastructure?
Yeah, and of course, when you talk about the just-in-time, it's more related to or next to the least privilege, right? So, and how many times the user can be accessed to the environment. Because as I mentioned, for example, if I'm users and I need to access some applications in my environment, and when I receive the permission to access some applications, if I receive this permission, so how many times I can have this access, or how many times I can use in this session or this credential to access some applications or some environment or some databases. When you set some just-in-time access, you can set in some limit of this access, right? And you can it's more safe when you think about the security, because again, from the attacker's perspective, if you renovate or revoke or renew some access, the attacker needs to gain the new access in your environment. And when you can implementing this just-in-time access, you can set some limits of this access in some environments. And of course, when you implementing that, you can reduce the attack surface. And in the end of the day, that's the idea when you talk about the privileged access management idea inside of the zero trust, because you can set this, as I mentioned during our conversation, some context. And you need to install, for example, some a proxies where you define what is the manager of these policies, applying this context, like I mentioned in the beginning, like a protocol, like a location, for example. Let's suppose, for example, if you are in a Berlin in Germany, for example, and you don't have any business with the Brazil, and so you can limit it, you can define this in these policies, and then no matter user that you have inside of your company in Germany or in Berlin can access some IP address in Brazil. You can limit it like a location. So this is a context that you can apply using a zero trust, applying the privileged access management, right? And basically, this is the explanation about the just-in-time. It's a least privilege. You define the limit.
Excellent. I think it's a good definition.
Can I add to that, David?
Sorry?
So can I add something to that?
Yeah, of course you can, please.
Yeah, just-in-time for privileged accounts is quite new, although it's already around 4 years. But for most people, yeah, it's not a real standard. But if you look at the automotive industry, just-in-time, or they call it JIT, is commonly used already for 30, 40 years. And this was not done overnight either. It takes a lot of fine-tuning, rethinking about the processes. And everything that comes to the conveyor belt needs to be at the right time, at the right place. So if some part is missing, the whole process stops. But if you implement the just-in-time principle, you have everything at the moment you need it. So it's very efficient, so it's cost-effective. And it takes a lot of work, but it's worth the effort. And as Philippe said, working from a least privilege approach, why would you need credentials for something if you're not targeted to do something with it? So there's no change or no process going that you need that, that access. The fact that you have admin rights on an Active Directory doesn't necessarily say that you have to log in now for that. So why would you have the access at that moment? It's better to have the access at the moment that you are doing work on a ticket at the right time, the right place. And as soon as you're finished, then remove the access again. And that should be about just in time, that you only have access when you need it and not when you not need it. And that reduces the attack factor in the end.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, now that we've covered just in time and covered the first step, let's move on to the second step, the next step. And now that we've covered the whole process of the action before the access, the second step of this privileged access lifecycle is associated with the managing of the actions that are being performed during the access with those privileged credentials. Well, that means monitoring the different systems and devices and the users are accessing, and of course, their level of privilege. Well, in this second aspect, the security teams, they should be able to detect and respond to any suspicious activity of users. And we've mentioned that usually they take more than 280 days to be detected. So it is very important that organizations employ efforts to detect and respond to security incidents. And that goes for you, Arnold. What do you think are the main reasons that organizations should be able to quickly detect and respond to security incidents related to those privileged credentials? And something to add here is, what do you think the consequence if those security teams fail to detect those security incidents?
Yeah, thank you, David. Again, 100% cyber secure cannot be reached. It's something we strive for, but 100% guarantee you will never get. Every company, every user will be subject to attack. That's a given fact. And if you detect a threat or even ongoing malicious activity in time, and you respond to that activity in the right way, you are making sure that the hacker or the bad actor cannot make much damage as he wants to. The earlier you detect something is wrong, the quicker you can stop that and try to fix it and prevent him from doing more damage than you want. So the damage that a hacker can do is very limited. If you fail to do so, it could compromise your data, your reputation, your risks. You can risk a fine because you don't adhere to regulations, or even go bankrupt, as we mentioned before. You mentioned even 60% in 6 months, which is quite a high amount. So monitoring and reporting are essential. And before, during, and after the privileged access, regardless if the activity was malicious or not. Because even you have an administrator that you trust, he can do work, but he can make mistakes. And that mistake can lead to issues. So you have to monitor and report continuously. That's a life cycle management that you do on the system. And only then you can be in control of your privileged access and get to the zero trust, just-in-time principle. And you make sure there are no loose ends. Everything that is there to do, you have to do. It's no question if you want to do it, but you have to do it, you must do it.
Excellent. Well, now that we've covered the before and the during, we can't forget the after. So that's the last step of the privileged access lifecycle, to verify all the actions that were performed during the access after this call is finished. And that's what we call after the access. And what do you think, Felipe, are the benefits of the continuous monitoring of actions performed with those privileged credentials in the environment?
Yes, I think this topic is totally related to the last question, because when you have some continuous monitoring, you can, when you have some detect and response team to work with that, we can, create some thing called like a cyber threat intelligence, if you have some, and you can have inside of your organization something more proactively, right? And because you are generating some intelligence in your environment. And because of this, when you have some continuous monitoring, you can create some different tasks. It depends on the risk of the level of the, for example, of this detection that you find in your tools, as you mentioned, because you need to have the tools to help you. You need to have the process, and you have the people, right? And the tools you can manage it, the process you can define it, but the people, it's more like a behavior, right? And that sometimes the people, woke up good or wake up bad. So it depends, because it's a human, right? It's different to manage it. Then when you have the constantly or the continuous monitoring in your environment, you can perform some actions more with more excellent action, right? And then, as I mentioned, you can create this kind of intelligence, because when you need to work with a security incident after the threat or after the breach, it's more complicated, because you have some incidents you already have, and you need to work with. We need to think more about what impact. We need to talk about the legal. We need to talk about the InfoSec organization with some process, what the impact with some data, it's theft or but when you have the continuous monitoring, you can work this intelligence, and you can work before the threats happen. So that's the idea when you have in your organization. I think it's just the main benefits that you have.
Well, I think that the strategies are pretty much shifting from to detect and to respond also to these cyber threats, instead of just being, instead of reactive, being proactive to properly
Mhm.
respond to those cyber threats is an important point.
Yeah,
Would you like to add
prevention.
anything? Sorry?
Even prevention.
Yeah.
If
Prevention.
people know that you are monitoring and recording sessions, etc., they will surely not do that if they are know that session is being monitored and recorded. They will not do the bad things, hopefully.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
We have witnessed an important revolution, and now going back to digital transformation that is going on in the recent years, that of course has been part of a response to the COVID-19 pandemic. But that this whole transformation has also been like never driven to organizations, and this fact is unprecedented. Threats and cyber attacks are a reality, and companies need to be prepared to respond to a situation of this nature. And just as technology advances at a rapid rate, the number of cybercrimes is also on the rise. And the data leak of the leak of customer data and also other sensitive information, as well as of downtime, for example, those can have serious financial and reputational consequences. And in addition, we increasingly have multiple regulations, as I've mentioned before, like GDPR, and in Europe, LGPD, CCPA in the US as well. And they can have serious financial and reputational consequences for the company. We also have, when these accesses are compromised, the organization, they must respond in a precise and timely manner. And as part of those strategies, the use of PAM tools like Singasigura is a business imperative. And Gartner says that it's virtually impossible to manage privileged access risks without specialized PAM tools. Singasigura is a global vendor, a global PAM vendor, and its main function is to keep the custody of the privileged credentials safe, and not only do that, but also manage them and ensures that this their life cycle, the life cycle that we've mentioned here, the before, the during, and the after, they allow the company to give the proper access to users without compromising passwords, making them available for live streaming, for example, and recording, to be compliant not only with GDPR and LGPD, but also PCI, IPA, ISO 27000, and of course SOX. Singasigura has also solutions for the life cycle management of digital certificates, which we consider part of PAM, elevation and privileges in workstation, that we call the PDM. And Singasigura also is capable of managing secrets in the development environments that we call DevOps. And of course, remote access solution for remote workers now during the pandemic, allowing the solution to deliver zero trust and just-in-time access. Well, having said that, we've come to the end of our roundtable. I don't know if you and Arnold, Arnold and Felipe would like to add something before we move on to the question and answers.
Yeah, a bit like what Felipe said. IT security as a whole will take a big chunk of your IT budget, but the risk is real, and the cost when things do go wrong will be much higher. So the question is, do you like to gamble or rather play safe?
Excellent. Would you like to add anything, Felipe?
No, I think yes. I think it's as we talked during this conversation, and it's not a buzzword, right? When you talk about the zero trust, that's a good point to understand that, right? Zero trust, it's a culture that we need to implement in using a privileged access management, and you need to understand how this life cycle works and how you can implement in your organization. And this way you can improve your security access, right, and your security data. So this is a very important to understand this conversation.
Excellent. So guys, we come to the end of this session. We have a question before we finish, and the question is how Singasigura ensures the visibility of those credentials that we've mentioned in the first step. Well, our scan discovery feature has been recognized by the market, and in the last Gartner's Magic Quadrant, our scan discovery capability was elected as best in class in the market. And mentioning the Gartner Magic Quadrant report, and I invite you all to access our website to download the report. Singasigura is considered the second best solution in terms of ability to execute, which means that we are able to deliver the second best, well, one of the best PAM capabilities in the market. So, and our scan discovery feature is able not only to discover well, the usual devices that we are used to, but also legacy devices. And lots of our customers, like telecom companies, they have legacy devices, and it's quite a challenge for them to discover and to list all the privileged credentials in the environment. And I think this is the first step that we have to protect those credentials. As we say that it is impossible to manage what is not known. So it's impossible to have the proper cybersecurity awareness if you don't know where these cyber threats are coming from. Hopefully that answers the question that have been brought by our audience. I don't think we have any other questions here. So let's announce who are the winners of our prizes today. And unfortunately, that's not me. But Florence Hamasala won the Alexa that we're giving away. Our team will make contact with you, Florence. And the winner of the gift card, the $100 gift card from Amazon, is David Cias. So congratulations to you guys. And okay, let me see. Okay, I have another question here before we end. How do client-side certificates work? What are options or regulations? Well, digital you want to answer that, Felipe, or you just okay? So digital certificates, that's an interesting question, because Gartner, for example, they don't include digital certificates inside the PAM world. So it considers that separately. But for example, KuppingerCole consider digital certificates as part of privileged credentials. And our certificate management solution, it is able to not only discover digital certificates in the environment, but it is also able to renew those certificates and to avoid downtime due to certificate outage, for example. So, and because the certificate management module is integrated with the PAM solution, it reduces deployment costs, and also it reduces training costs, because, well, it's all embedded in the PAM solutions. About options and regulations, I believe that those are the same as associated with privileged credentials as well. So ISO, NIST cybersecurity framework as well. Those regulations that demand all the accesses to be properly managed in the organizations, and of course digital certificates are also associated with those privileged access as well. I guess those were pretty much the two questions here in the webinar. So thank you very much, Arnold, for your time during the session. We really appreciate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Felipe. And if you'd like to add something here before we finish the sessions, please do so.
I just would like to say thanks for the attendance, for everyone, and a good conversation.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you very much, guys. Bye-bye.